All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We will start in a minute. Before we enter the session, I want to inform you that this session will be recorded, and also for the audience that have joined us today, if you have any question, please type your question in the Q&A box so our panelists can read them. But if you have any comments, you can share them in the chat box. Thank you, and I will welcome Leticia.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, good morning. My name is Leticia Ferreira. I'm here with University of Texas at Dallas. I'm a student here. I'm pursuing my MS in International Management. I'm also a master's in Supply Chain Management from UTD. Before that, I have spent some 20 years working for different companies, multinational companies in the healthcare sector. So it's my pleasure to be here with you today. But most important thing for me is to introduce you to Allison Stark. So Allison Stark is the global manager for HPE. She leads all the wellness and well-being programs at HPE. It's a pleasure to have her with us today. It's going to be an interview, and I really would like to encourage you guys to just let us know where are you watching us from. Leave some comments for us, leave some questions. We want this to be a very live and interesting discussion for you. So let me then introduce you and welcome Allison to join the conversation. Thanks, Allison, for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So let's start by just telling us about yourself and your career. How did you get to this position you have at right now at HPE?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I graduated from Trinity University in San Antonio 20 plus years ago with a degree in finance. Honestly, back then there weren't as many specialized programs in HR specifically. So it's definitely come a long way since I was in school. And I knew I wanted to do something business related, and I had to kind of focus in on one category of that. So I chose finance, really not having a clue what I wanted to do. And, full transparency, I graduated. I was a broke college student with a ton of student loans, at my doorstep. And so really I landed in the benefits space by default. It was like evaluating different job offers and taking the one that would help me pay my bills, really. So it's funny how I got here, but I'm so glad I did. I started my career actually at Hewlett, which is now Aon, primarily in benefits administration. And I did a lot of implementing clients onto their benefits administration platform and then managing ongoing operations for all, aspects of benefits administration. From there, I continued on at Aon for a number of years, and I moved into a consulting role where I was supporting, many Fortune 500 clients with, benefits strategy, plan design, running RFPs, doing a lot of vendor management. In that last consulting role that I was in, Hewlett Packard was actually one of my clients at the time. And it was during the phase where they were splitting between Hewlett Packard and Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And so they were building out their benefits team at Hewlett Packard Enterprise and asked me to join that team, which was fantastic. And it actually led me to my first employer role ever, where I wasn't servicing clients. And man, it's a different world on this side of the fence. I absolutely love it. So I've been at HPE for about 6 years. I started on their US benefits team, primarily doing program and vendor management. And then through a series of just kind of natural attrition, I got moved into the global wellness role about just over about 3 years ago. So at that time when I took over the role, we did have a wellness offering on a global level, but since then I've been really privileged to be able to expand that out and really incorporate wellness as a component of our culture across the organization. So it's grown quite significantly over the past few years. And just on a personal note, I'm someone that struggles a lot, and especially in the area of mental health. I have anxiety, depression, panic disorder. I've had, lots of flavors of mental health issues over the years. And so being able to focus on wellness has really been truly the most fulfilling role of, my 20 plus year career. It's really powerful to be able to come to a job every day and take what's a personal passion and get to apply it in a professional capacity. So very rewarding role that I'm in now.
Yeah, that is fantastic. So first of all, we are actually talking here with a mixed audience. So we have students from UTD and other schools, and we have professionals, practitioners from different industries. So it's good to just have this conversation and so that our audience can relate with both aspects of it. So us being former students and now professionals. So tell us a little bit more about what is wellness. What is it about? Because at times it can be just like some untangible term. So what is global and what is global wellness or well-being, and what is this about?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question because, wellness and well-being, especially now, is, I'm hearing background noise, you guys. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
I think so too. Let me see if we
on
need
my
to.
side, I just wanted to make sure I picked up so you guys can hear me.
No.
But yeah, wellness and well-being, those words are, in some respect, especially within the HR community, can be somewhat slang, right? Or a buzzword, so to speak. And so, the way I look at it is really, it's a holistic view of your overall well-being, right? It's not just physical health, but it's mental health, it's emotional health, it's financial health, it's that social connection component, right? And all of these components really play into the overall health of a person. So it's important when you're thinking about wellness as an overall strategy that you're including all of these pieces when you're building out programs to support an organization. Another key when you're thinking about wellness is you have to consider that not necessarily everyone is struggling or needing support, right, in all of these areas at any one point. So many of these components are driven by moments in life. Maybe you're a new grad, right, or a new parent, or going through a big financial change like moving, or even getting ready to retire, right? There's a whole spectrum within an employee population that are facing very different circumstances and challenges at any given time. So, when you think about wellness, it's important to consider a diverse set of programs that employees can tap in and out of truly at their moments of need. And it's also important to consider families, right? And how you can support them as part of your program. The reality is that if an employee has a family member that's struggling, right, that impacts the employee as well. So offering family-based solutions becomes really key to rounding out any sort of wellness program. So it's very, very broad. And there's a lot of, factors to consider, but it's truly getting at, what makes a person feel whole. And there's a lot of components to that.
Yeah. And I can imagine that, this past 1 year with all that's going on in the world, I would suspect that there's been a greater demand for or greater engagement of employees in all those types of wellness programs at HPE and probably in other companies as well, right? So, but why do companies care about it? Because sometimes we just feel like, okay, companies are just for profit. They are just like concerned about, making money and just like growing market share, their brand awareness and stuff like that. So, but why do companies invest, or why do companies care about wellness at this point?
Yeah, I think that's a really simple answer, actually. If people aren't well, they can't perform to the best of their abilities, right? If they don't feel cared about and supported by their employer or their manager, they may not be motivated or even able to give their all, right? So with that being said, unfortunately, there are still a lot of organizations out there that offer, I say, quote, wellness programs as a check the box to, type of situation. Like, we offer an EAP, so we have a wellness program. But really, that's not meaningful, certainly if it's not tied to overall leadership messaging, right? Wellness needs to be a part of an organizational culture. Employees need to see executive leadership and their people managers demonstrating and engaging in wellness activities. And people really need to feel empowered to take advantage of whatever's offered in the wellness round. Even if that means, doing things as simple as taking time away from work, in the middle of the day to go out and get a walk in or do a meditation or something like that. So, when those pieces fall into place, you really will see your wellness utilization increase. You see people grow and be willing to share and vocalize their wellness experiences. And that's what really helps kind of drive that culture piece. And you'll start to see a shift in wellness becoming a normal part of day-to-day conversations, whether that's, checking in on your peers or even your people leader saying, how are you doing? Or kicking off team meetings with wellness activities or, organizing team activities around a wellness theme. So, companies really care about this because wellness has a direct correlation to productivity for sure. There's no doubt there. But at HPE, we focus on wellness not only because of that, but probably more importantly, because it's the right thing to do, right? We want our employees to feel cared about. We want our employees to focus on wellness. And, our progress in this area is reflected through data. We've won numerous health and wellness awards on a global level, on a regional level. We get great feedback from team members on what we do offer. And, for me, one of the most impactful things is we get a lot of anecdotal feedback from our team members who have shared, personal experiences about our wellness programs and how they've impacted their lives, their families' lives. We've even had cases where people have told us that our programs help save a life. So when you hear those kinds of things, it's not check the box, right? It's a meaningful approach to a culture, to supporting team members and really making them feel part of a family and valued.
Yeah, so I think it's really very important that it is not really checking boxes, or it's not really like we do it because there's all this virtual signaling thing. Also, we have to do because everybody does it. But you mentioned that the programs, the offers will vary according to moments of life, where people are. So in terms of individuals and unities of your company, I would assume that those programs or those offers will be different, but you lead those programs at HPE globally. So tell us about the challenges of just running global programs, wellness programs on a global base. So how those programs will differ from country to country or region to region, if that is the case.
Yeah, it's definitely the case. And one of the, key things that you have to really be focused on in terms of wellness globally, one of the key things you have to think about right from the get-go before you even decide that a program is needed or should be rolled out is, what would the messaging be? And, would these programs or campaigns resonate locally, right? So what works in the US isn't necessarily effective in India, for example. You have to consider cultural norms, stigmas around wellness, especially mental health. And even geographical concerns, like we run a step challenge, an physical activity challenge every year for 6 weeks. And we play around with the timing of that challenge every year because, no matter what time of the year we run it, it's winter for somebody and summer for somebody else, right? And so you have to evaluate those kinds of things and make sure you're rolling it out for the greater good, of the organization. Specifically to mental health, I like to talk about that because that is one that's, incredibly different based on where you're at the world, right? So we have a very strong behavioral health program in place at HPE. And, one of the things we had to consider globally before we rolled this out is, what's the right way to do this? How do we make sure we're making it approachable to everybody, no matter where they're at? And so we did some, deeper diving on this. We created a behavioral health council that had a lot of different thought leaders from some of our vendor partners and our consulting partners. And we leaned on them to kind of help shape our strategy on how we wanted to approach mental health on a global level. Through this process, we facilitated a global focus group where we we literally tested everything from campaign taglines to imagery, all the little details. And through that, we learned a lot about what would be meaningful in each region. And you really have to focus on the small details. You know, I mentioned imagery. You know, I remember when we were rolling this out several years ago, we, you know, selected maybe 10, 15 different images that we thought might represent a behavioral health campaign or program, and got feedback about, you know, things you might not even think about. We had, you know, some people fist bumping, you know, like supporting each other. And in some parts of the world, that's actually, you know, offensive, or, you know, people don't like to touch hands. And so we had to really get at that granular level to say, okay, how can we do this in a broad way that'll make everyone feel included? You have to think about terminology too. You know, we had to play around with, is mental health the right word? Is emotional health the right word? Is behavioral health the right word? So you really have to think through that. And, you know, the best way to do that is through that feedback and making sure you're engaging with your global partners here. So another way that we kind of address global challenges is, you know, we have wellness leads at a regional and country level who we're consistently engaging with to understand how programs and campaigns that we've rolled out are resonating, which, you know, forces us to continuously evolve our messaging, our programs, the way we bring things to our global audience. We also have a volunteer wellness ambassador network. And that is about 300 team members across the globe that have, you know, a particular passion around wellness. And in their respective countries or at their site locations, they serve as the cheerleaders, right, for whatever wellness activities we're rolling out, and you know, can really motivate employees and participate them to engage at a local level. And they have the freedom to kind of adapt some of that wellness content to make it meaningful for the local population. So even though it's rolled out on a global scale, there is that, you know, flexibility to tailor it to make it most meaningful, you know, wherever the team member may be sitting. And then I think another thing that we look at a lot is leveraging data, right? So we do review, you know, utilization to the extent that we can of our programs on a country by country basis. So, you know, we look at, where is it high, where is it low, you know, what's the root cause behind those. And, you know, through that, we found a lot of times it can be as simple as just how you're presenting the information that's driving or not driving results in a particular area. So it's, you know, you're never going to get it right 100% of the time, because the world is vast and cultures are very different, as you know. But as long as you're putting in kind of those checks and balances and having that feedback loop going, it really helps you, you know, get closer and closer each time you do something.
Yeah, so some key things that I listen from your explanation is that you really got to know your audience very well. So it does not have, there's no such solution that will really work everywhere in the globe, and even within each country, you may have some differences, cultural differences and preferences. So it's really about listening to them, right? Having those focus groups, having those conversations and analyzing data. So that brings me to one question from our audience. So first of all, thank you so much, you guys who are watching us from different parts of the world. So we have a large number of people here from all parts of the globe. We have some professors also from UTD joining us today, but we have Tom Broom. So Tom is also a partner of us. He has supported our JAM initiative, our Joint-Academe Mobility initiative last year. So he was engaged with one of our programs. So thank you so much, Tom, for your question. So we have here a question for you, which is, with steady increase in restrictions aligned with privacy and data security, how is HPE balancing these restrictions against the need to exercise duty of care for transferees and assignees? For example, suppliers in the mobility space are overwhelmingly not HIPAA compliant. So what do you have to tell us about it?
Yeah, I mean, that is a tricky one, especially when you're in a global environment. And, you know, mobility is not my area of expertise, so I'm not even going to attempt to speak to that. But it is a challenge that we come across quite frequently in the wellness space, especially when we're rolling something out outside of the US, because, you have GDPR to think about, and Europe and other, country specific, security requirements, compliance requirements. And so, HPE is a technology company. We have security services. So you might imagine that we have a very sharp security team, legal team, compliance team, et cetera, that we lean on heavily anytime we're looking to introduce a new partner. So, it's making sure that partners are specifically versed in a global environment, right? They already are taking into consideration those local and regional laws in their build out of their solution. But another layer on top of that is, usually even more stringent, is does it meet HP's, security requirements and on top of that. And so typically, even if we find a great solution, it has to pass that litmus test before we can even proceed to rolling anything out. So it is a process. There is concern from team members on a somewhat regular basis about privacy and what data specifically is being shared with vendors. And even, what data is being shared back with HPE. You got to think about something like an EAP program, right? Somebody might be nervous about accessing those services because they think that we're going to get a report with their name on it saying so-and-so called about depression. And really that's not the case. And most people that work in benefits or HR understand that we're getting aggregate data back and it's not person specific. But team members, employees, they don't necessarily know that, right? And so part of it is important to do education around, what data is being shared, what's being shared with the vendor and with us. And so whenever we're talking about wellness programs to our team members, to our people leaders, we make sure we're stressing the confidential nature of our arrangement with a vendor so that people can feel confident that nobody's going to know if they're reaching out and what they're reaching out for. So it's really an education thing from an employee perspective.
Right. So we really got to take care of our employees and our teams. And it's in all those very little single details, and privacy is definitely one very important issue for everyone to take care of. So let's talk about some concrete examples. Some tell us about the HPE Global Wellness programs that you run, and what are your favorite, examples or favorite things about them?
Yeah, so I am super passionate, as I kind of mentioned, about mental health, and I think that in this area, HPE is somewhat leading the way, and what we offer our team members in terms of behavioral health and the support that we provide to them and their families. And, typically I think people are probably familiar with the fact that you have, various programs available to employees, whether that's, something to get in physical fitness, something to help with financial planning, EAP programs, things like that. We've spent a lot of time trying to go beyond kind of just those cookie cutter pillars of, check the box types of programs, and rolled out some really cool, innovative things that have really resonated with our audience. I'll just highlight a couple of newer ones that we tried out as part of the pandemic last year. We wanted to really encourage people to, continue pushing through the pandemic, offer them new and different ways to explore mental health or help improve their mental health. And so as part of that, last year, we rolled out Headspace, which is a meditation app that helps with any kind of mental health issue you can think of. There's meditations for anxiety, depression, that kind of thing, but they also have some really cool stuff around sleep and movement and ways that you can incorporate that in your life. And at this point, we have out of a population of 60,000 employees globally, we have about 12,000 people actively using that across the globe. And the utilization has been fantastic, but more so the feedback that we've gotten on how helpful that's been through the pandemic has been really encouraging. Another cool program we rolled out is we partnered with a company out of California that's offering a global gardening program. And so we offer, bi-weekly live interactive gardening programs in multiple time zones. and they're personalized. So no matter where you're at in the globe, you can join in and you can find out how to start your garden from start to finish, depending on what region you're in, what growing zone you're in, what space you may have available. Maybe you only have you have a backyard, or maybe you only have a patio, or, a balcony or something like that. And that's been a really fun way for team members to kind of, get outside the house, try something new, engage with their families, and then feel a sense of accomplishment when they actually grow something and can, harvest something
Right.
and that. So we really try and do, innovative things like that and look at wellness outside of that box. And another thing that I think we do really effectively is we, in addition to talking about programs and making them available, we run a number of different global campaigns each year. And each of the campaigns has a specific theme or topic. So a couple of examples I can share specific to the mental health piece is in January, we ran a campaign around gratitude, compassion, and self-care. And our campaigns are pretty inclusive in terms of what we roll out. It's not just, here's an idea, go check it out. We bring a lot of research to the table, and we educate our team members about the science behind the topic, how how gratitude can actually impact your brain. What are the stats around it? What can you see it doing for you mentally and physically? And we bring in, experts to help us flesh out that content. We have a podcast series. It's available if any of you guys want to check it out publicly. It's called Straight Talk for Real Life. And we typically have a corresponding podcast episode within each of our campaigns that we bring in an expert to dive in, again, to the science behind it. We have a very analytical population, lots of technical folks, engineers. And, we found the most impactful way to kind of get the message out is with facts, right? Here's what the science is saying. And once you can kind of get that foundation built, you can add on to that. And, as part of that, when we did a 30-day challenge where we gave a bunch of different ideas that people could do over a 30-day period to practice gratitude, compassion, and self-care. And within that, we also, led people to some of the programs and resources that we had in place. So, if you want to, consider gardening as a form of self-care, we made sure they knew Start Organic exists. Go check that out if this is something you're interested in. So we get to do a lot of really fun things through those campaigns. Right now, we're running one called Mental Health and the Creative Arts. And again, bringing science to the campaign as to, how participating in the creative arts can actually impact your mental health, talking to researchers in that space, sharing that with team members. And right now we're running a series of art therapy type workshops available globally in different time zones where people can tap in and they can learn about, the mental health benefits of the creative arts, but also get involved in it themselves. We have dancing workshops set up, we have creative arts, we have, drawing workshops set up. And then finally, to round that out, we created an online virtual gallery, right? We really wanted to allow people to experience their artwork from their peers, is create that connection globally. And so we have, a virtual gallery right now filling up with different forms of creative arts. And it's just been a new and different way to look at mental health. And again, where we can, we tie it back to existing programs that are available year round. But really what just differentiates us from some of our, peer competitors is this approach to really honing in on something new and different and giving somebody, a new perspective on how they may be able to support their mental health.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I like what you said about, understanding your audience again. You have a bunch of people that are just like data analysts and they just like work with data all day long. So how about showing them some data to really have them, get interested in the programs and engage in all those activities. So again, just like knowing your audience and just like trying to offer something that resonates with them, that really appeals to what they value and stuff like that. So I have another question for you from our audience, and here's Dr. Mike Pang. In our program here, we put a lot of emphasis in understanding and developing those cross-cultural communication and management abilities and skills. And it's really important for our students and for our community to understand those differences between country to country, right? So one thing that may work very well in the US may not really work well in other parts of the world. Right. So Dr. Peng is asking, can you share any concrete examples of well-intentioned wellness programs that work well in the US, but do not work well in other countries? If you can name at least one such program in one country.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to go back to it, but it's such an important one, which is mental health services, like through the EAP program, right? So it's highly stigmatized outside the US. I mean, you think about the US, it's not uncommon to, be at dinner with your friends or even talking to a coworker and say, oh yeah, I saw my therapist today and we were talking about whatever. I mean, that's becoming more normalized in the US. Where outside the US, I would say particularly in Asia, India, Japan, China, mental health is something that traditionally is kept within the family, right? You don't talk about any of your personal problems outside of your family. You would never, consider going to talk to a stranger about what's going on. And if you did, you certainly wouldn't be telling your coworkers or your friends about your therapy appointment. That is a really, really tough one to crack. And when you think about how do you shift that stigma, how can you make these services more approachable, we've tried to kind of backdoor into it. So instead of just saying, here's the EAP program, you can reach out and talk to a therapist if you're having a problem, we've tried to address it from a different angle. And what we'll do is we'll put on a number of different webinar sessions around mental health topics that we get our EAP provider to actually facilitate. So it's a general session about maybe, managing stress through COVID, right? It's open to everyone. You can join it anonymously. You can hear from a clinician who takes you through the content, answers questions. And once you start to establish that trust with team members, oh, like this vendor actually knows what they're talking about, or I learned something useful from this presentation. Maybe I want to dip my toe in the water and actually reach out and talk to somebody one-on-one. So you have to build that trust and give them that, that foundation of the knowledge that people, really have value to bring from that perspective. And since we've been doing this on a global basis, I mean, we've seen our attendance at those webinars just increase from maybe 40 a webinar to hundreds, 700, 800. And so we can see that approach is working. And then slowly on the tail end of that, you can see the face-to-face kind of therapy connections inch up as well. So I think it's getting creative about how you approach it. And so far that's working for us, and we're hearing positive feedback about it, and the numbers aren't lying to us. So that's encouraging.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it brings us to another question from Tom. So objectively or statistically, how does HPE got the success of its wellness programs initiative? So you're talking about attendance to those webinars and then the usage of services. So what are the other metrics that you use to measure success?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the number one question I get every time I talk about wellness is, how do you measure success? How do you measure return on investment? And I hear, other peers get asked that same question from other organizations. And, the answers vary broadly, right? And part of it is, what does your leadership want or need to know, right? Data is important to them. But, as I mentioned before, HP, a lot of what we do in the wellness space is because it's the right thing to do. So, I feel like we have a little bit of flexibility in terms of measuring success. So we definitely look at utilization data and engagement, and that can be everything from, how many people are opening emails that we're sending out that talk about wellness initiatives, down to the vendor level of how many people are actually using a particular program or engaging with a campaign. We do some level of surveying. So frequently throughout the year, we do small scale like pulse surveys where we can check in on certain populations and just get a feel, a snapshot in time of how people are feeling about the offerings. We also host various employee listening sessions. Many times our executive leadership is involved in those. and employees are very candid and open about sharing feedback on what we're missing and what is working well. And then we have an annual employee survey that's global, that can measure certain aspects of our wellness programs as well. Right now, we're at 92% of team members saying that HPE supports the wellness of themselves and their families. So we're really proud of that, especially coming, on the tail end of a pandemic that was really, and continues to be devastating in so many areas. And I think finally, I mentioned it before, but anecdotal feedback, right, has been incredibly powerful. Our team members are not shy about complaining about things, but it's also been really surprising that they've been very open to sharing the positive experiences, especially when it comes to wellness. So it's not uncommon for a team member to reach out to our chief people officer or our CEO and say, thanks for doing this. This really made a difference. And that, continues to solidify the importance of these programs. And then I think lastly, one thing that I like to track personally, and it's, hard to report out on, but when we started rolling out certain aspects of wellness, specifically mental health, one of the goals that I had was to begin to slowly shift that stigma away from, a negative thing and really normalize that. And I knew that wasn't going to happen overnight. I didn't think that would happen in a year or 2 years. But what we're seeing is that people are getting braver. We have an internal social media platform where team members can post freely on a wellness related page about their experiences or what they like or don't like. And we're seeing an uptick in the amount of people and the types of things that people are willing to share. And to me, that's huge progress. That means we're creating a culture where people are starting to feel more comfortable talking about that and putting it out there and seeing that their peers are going through the same thing, right? It gets that connection going. People respond and say, oh, I went through that. Have you thought about this? And all of those things, to me, are a huge measure of success. So it's kind of all over the board. It's not one and done. And I know that we do it a little bit differently than some organizations.
Yeah, that's great. So it really depends on how you define success, right? So the metrics that you're going to use will depend really essentially on what is it that you call success. So what you're saying, it's also it's a goal. I understand that it's a goal for you to really destigmatize all these mental health issues. So as you see more people talking about it freely and with no restrictions or that this is a sign that people are talking more about something. It is a measure. It is a way to signalize that, this is becoming more and more a normal issue that all people are talking, right? So it really depends on how do you define success, and then you just like design your metrics accordingly, right?
Yep. We're flexible,
right?
And creative.
Right. So tell us a little bit more about this. The effect of the pandemics on the program. So what changed? It's of course everything changed with COVID, right?
Yeah.
But how did it affect the programs, the wellness programs at HPE, and how do you see it moving forward? After at least we are now hoping that with more and more people getting vaccinated, and situations getting more under control. And I know this is not true for all the world, and we were talking about it earlier, right? That how different countries are still struggling with the pandemic. So how, tell us about how your programs are different or not as a result of what's going on in the world, and how do you see it moving forward, if all those programs should maintain or expand? So tell us about it.
Yeah, I think that's top of mind for so many people that are in charge of leading wellness programs right now. And I kind of look at it in 3 phases, right? Pre-pandemic. So pre-pandemic, our focus was on this holistic wellness program through, what you typically see as the pillars, like I mentioned before: physical health, mental and emotional health, and then financial fitness, and sometimes that social component, right? And really, there was general communications, ongoing communications and trainings about the various programs that were available, making sure managers were aware of them, making sure HR business partners were aware of them, and then promoting them to, team members, and really helping them make the connection to how the programs helped support their wellness in those different areas. And I kind of think about it as a feeling of fun, right? Like fun messaging. This is fun. Check this out. This is, an exciting challenge. Get involved, get active, get your steps in. And so I think it took, for me, at least personally, a huge shift as we moved into the pandemic, right? We went from focusing on fun wellness activities to in many cases, just helping people survive on a day-to-day basis, right? And we had to really kind of hone in on the diverse needs of the various communities within HPE, right? It wasn't, we didn't make an assumption that everyone was struggling with anxiety, or we needed to put out some blanket information about how to get through the pandemic. It was more like, what are our populations going through? We know we have a huge, population of parents, right? They have a totally different set of challenges than people that were living alone, or people that were maybe caretakers of, an aging loved one or something like that. And so at that point, we decided to structure all of our messaging and program offerings around those various communities. And so, if we're looking at parents, for example, we put together resources and guides for things specifically to support, parents that are working from home now, that have kids that may be learning virtually, or young kids that, can't go to daycare. And we brought in, speakers that were parenting experts specifically to talk to that population and really, help people understand that we are trying to meet them where they're at and what their particular situation is. And we did that. We packaged that up for those different communities that I mentioned and really gave a personalized kind of wellness approach to those people. And I think through, the pandemic, it really went from that feeling of fun, lighthearted wellness stuff to a feeling of necessity, right? Like, how can we help people right now, many of which are really, truly struggling? So the tone shifted, the types of things that we were talking about became more serious. And I think that was definitely needed. When we look at kind of post-pandemic and what that may be, it's hard for me to talk about post-pandemic right now, especially when there's parts of the world that are truly in crisis right now. And a lot of our team members, fall into that category. But, longer term thinking is, really around, for me, helping people adapt. How are we going to do that? Coming out of the pandemic, we all, whether we want it or not, are going to have a new way of life. Things have changed, permanently in a lot of cases. Many of us are learning new ways of working, right? Lots of workforces are shift to working primarily from home now, and will continue to do so post-pandemic. We have people that are dealing with loss and grief and trauma as a result of the pandemic. Parenting and school looks different. Ways that we're going to be socializing look different. That is a huge amount of change to happen all at one time. And so I think really, a focus on adapting to that. How can we support people as they learn to kind of navigate the new normal? Supporting a sense of resiliency, what is that going to look like? I think those are some of the key, topics that we're going to have to really think, deeply about. How do we do that? And how do we build on the momentum of wellness that, we've really kind of developed under the pandemic? We had a strong wellness program. We have for many years before the pandemic. But because of the nature of the pandemic, we were fortunate that we really got to spend a lot of time highlighting wellness throughout the organization, from the top level up, top level down. So it's gotten a lot of eyes on it. And I don't want to lose traction on that. We got to just run with that momentum as we move forward. So a lot of variables there still, right? Again, don't want to put the cart in front of the horse when there's still people living in really tough situations right now that will need and continue to need help for quite a while.
Yeah. So you mentioned resiliency, and there's a question here from the audience about it. So do you have any advice for our students as they start to discover more about self, during this period, and maybe work on resiliency so we may better handle the challenges that may come?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really tough question. Resiliency is something I study a lot about, and I personally work on it with my therapist and outside of work as well. And it means something different for everybody. If you look up the definition of resiliency, it's quite varied actually. But it really does center in the mind, and it's about changing thought patterns, which can be hard to do. But you can do it, and you can do it through very small chunks of habits is how I like to look at it. So, you're not trying to tackle getting up and feeling fantastic and amazing and energized every day. That's just not realistic. But what little things can you chunk down and start incorporating as a habit in your daily life? I mean, if you just look at sleep, for example, sleep is so important to be able to function, and it's really key to resiliency. Again, because it's going back to the thought patterns in your brain, and your brain needs sleep to be healthy. But you can do tiny things like go to bed an hour earlier, or set a reminder when you need to go to bed. It's easy to get sucked into Netflix or reading or whatever you may be doing, working in some cases. That simple reminder of adding an hour of sleep to your day each day will have an impact. And then you layer on a new habit on top of that. Maybe it's around nutrition, or maybe it's around negative thinking, and maybe that leads you to journaling, or maybe gratitude practice, where every day you're intentional about saying 3 things you're grateful for, writing those down. All of those have a direct impact on retraining your brain, and ultimately over time lead to resiliency.
Right, thanks for that. So we have also some comments and questions here from Karen. So Karen Guillermo is also from HPE. So he's saying, so grateful for everything we have access to as HPE team members. And I truly admire Allison as a leader in this space. Tell us more about your journey to be an authentic thought leader in this space.
Ooh, that's a tough question. And thank you for the compliments. I think I'll go back to what I said in the beginning, which is, this is my personal passion. I never stop thinking about wellness. And you've heard me talk about mental health a lot, and that's because it comes from a very deep personal place and challenges that I've had to go through as a human. I am constantly reading anything and everything I can get my hands on about mental health. I already mentioned, I go to therapy once a week, every week. I wouldn't miss it. I participate in group therapy and other support groups outside of work. And so just that part comes naturally to me. And then what I've really enjoyed, and certainly helpful from a professional perspective, is being a member of different health and wellness related organizations, both on a national and global level, where you get together with peer organizations that are going through the same or similar issues, and you learn from them about how they're addressing wellness in their culture, what's worked, what hasn't, and really try and leverage that. And take those learnings from that. Also, just relying on the expertise of vendors, right? The vendors that are rolling out these products to support wellness have a wealth of information. They have, chief science officers, chief medical officers on their boards that are really approaching this from, more than just a product perspective. What can you learn from them? Networking, certainly, I'm sure that's not, that's something you hear all the time, at least I did in school. Networking is key. And I didn't believe them until I had to get a real job, but it is, finding people that are passionate about this, that are doing this for their job, is another great way to build on those thoughts and really expand things out and look at things in a new way.
Mm-hmm. So awesome. All those tips about really connecting with people and learning from others. So if you find some mentors that can really guide you through the way, someone that you admire, someone who can really give you some tough love. Also, we talked about it yesterday with Karen and Crystal and Stephanie in yesterday's session. So it is really about those human relationships, those connections. We can't go anywhere without others, right? So I think these are good thoughts. So we have other questions here about this relationship between academe and the industry. So Tim Montgomery is asking, how can we better structure or better formalize the working relationships between business and academia? And in science, this teamwork would begin with basic research arena, of course, but how can we do that in the business area, in the business space?
Yeah, I'll be honest, that's probably not, my area of expertise. When I was, at the point of getting ready to graduate, there weren't a lot of opportunities like this session that were happening where, employers were brought in to talk to students, which I think is so impactful. I wish I did have that opportunity. I think, looking at expanding these types of options and building those bridges, thinking about what, if I look at it from an employer side, thinking about what schools or what, academic institutions are really preparing people for roles in HR and, trying to create the opportunities like you guys have here. And I have a feeling, I don't know this for sure, that right now academia is probably the one driving that. And, it might be more impactful if the employer side was driving that as well, not only from a recruiting perspective, right, to meet potential candidates, but just as a way to educate and inspire people about what's out there, whether they take it to your organization or not. So that's a tough question. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So let me just do some advertisement about our program. So we've been really building that bridge. We are, since last fall, we've been collaborating with industry experts in the global mobility industry. And it's been a great learning experience for all of us. For our students, it's just a dream because they have the opportunity to be mentored and to network with amazing professionals, stellar names in this space. And also, I think for the industry, also there's this benefit, not only for recruiting and just like having access to a talent pool, but it's really, that dialogue, we need to understand what is needed, what are the skills and competencies that are needed, that are in demand, and just like really help our students to prepare for just to meet those needs. And on the other hand, we really want our students to develop that sense of just like being in contact with someone in the real world. So school is something, and in classroom you have an experience, but real life in a business, in a corporation, or a nonprofit organization is just a totally different game. So we really, here at UTD, we are fostering that type of relationship. And by the way, tomorrow we're going to have our last day of the GEM speaker series this year. So I invite everyone to join us tomorrow at 10 a.m., where we're going to have another panel that's going to be led by Ben Cross, and we are going to have 4 different speakers sharing their experience and talking about the past, present, and future of global mobility. So join us tomorrow as well. So let me see, I have all the questions also here from the audience. What are your aspirations for the practice of wellness and well-being?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about that personally, that looks a lot different than professionally. But, if I speak about it from an HPE perspective, I want to continue to lead the way in the wellness space, continue to be recognized outside of HPE for the creative things that we're doing, the innovative ways that we're looking at wellness. And so, I'm continuing to stay on top of what's coming out, what are the trends saying? And in most cases, when I look at the trends, we're ahead of them. And so I constantly personally challenge myself to think outside the box and find out what might be new and interesting and different. Another key component to that is I am not scared to bring crazy, wacky ideas to my leadership and say, hey, how about we try this? And 9 times out of 10, it's a go. And they're not always wins, but the fact that HPE offers us the ability to try things, to fail fast, learn and move on, really gives a lot of flexibility into the things that we can try in the wellness space. And I'm super excited to see what's to come, because I think really coming out of the pandemic, there's a whole new set of possibilities. There's a whole new set of vendors that are out there ramping up to support people past the pandemic. in new and different ways. And I'm really excited about the future of wellness. And I think that this is going to be normalized across organizations a lot more than it is now, just as a result of where we're coming from.
Awesome. So let us talk about what types of advice would you give our students, okay? If they are willing to pursue a career in HR or start their career at HPE or somewhere in this HR field. So how should they prepare for it?
So I, fell into it, right? I didn't even really know what HR was. So you guys are leaps and bounds ahead of where I was when I started my career. I think that when you think about HR, most aspects of HR, right, are their caretaking role, really. You're helping others, you're supporting others, you're focusing on other people's success, right? And you're doing that in various ways, whether that's through benefits, whether that's through wellness or compensation. You have to have, I think, that kind of innate, quality inside you that you like helping other people be successful. You like helping other people through their challenges. I think that's probably the most important thing. The business acumen will fall into place, right? As long as your goal is helping others in this specific HR type of way, all the other pieces will definitely fall into place. I think also if you're considering a job in HR or, wellness more specifically, is understanding the culture of the employer, right? Is wellness, is HR, is benefits a check the box for them, or is it embedded within their culture? Do the executives and senior leadership really get behind that? Do they demonstrate a culture of wellness or, helping others? Is it a priority for that organization from a budgeting perspective? Is there, do they truly see, this organization truly see value in what you're doing from an HR perspective? So I think those are all really important things to think about, at least for me, that would give me a fulfilling place and fulfilling goals within an organization was, to make sure it's culturally relevant and not, again, a check the box kind of, yes, we have to have this type of situation.
Right. That's key. Understanding really the culture and values and goals of that organization. And if you really feel connected to those goals and aspirations and that culture really fits yours, that's a great start. So do some research and go prepared to demonstrate how your own goals, your own values, your own passions relate to those of the organization. I think that helps, right?
Yeah.
So let me see. I have another question. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just agreeing with you. Sorry, go ahead.
All right. So I have here another several comments from people saying thank you so much for all the comments. Let me see. Yeah, I'm just looking through the chat to see if there's some questions, remaining questions there. Yeah, as people are saying, excellent presentation. Thank you for all your insights. And I'd like to thank all the people who are here. So David Matsumura, Elizabeth Molina, Holly Greer, Carl Stube, and sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, Kaylee Vasquez, Karen is here, Kim Nguyen, Lee Gonzalez, hello to Lee. Lee was also one of our mentors last year with the GEM program. Thank you so much for joining. We have Logan D, Dr. Mike Peng. We have Rachel Pena, Rob Matthews, Tanya Mariottini, hello, thanks for joining us. Also Taylor Hollings, Tom Broom, Oliva, Yokuko, Fukuda, so many different people from all over the world, and even people from different time zones. So thank you so much for joining us during very early in the morning for you guys, or very late at night for you. So thank you so much. So we are running out of time, and I really would like to thank you so much, Allison, for all your insight, and you're such an amazing person to talk to. You know, we see the passion in your eyes and the way you talk about what you do, and we definitely see that love makes a difference in what you do, right? So working with passion really makes a difference and makes you successful. So I wish you all the best in your new, steps in your career as well. So, and again, let me just remind you about tomorrow. So tomorrow you're going to have this panel about the past, present, and future of global mobility. You're going to have Ben Cross, which is founder of Glomo, moderating a panel with Catherine Cassidy, she is the president and COO of Altair Global. We are going to have Horst Gallo, which is the vice president of HR and talent management at IBM. We are going to have Mia Holosan, executive director with JP Morgan Chase, and we are also going to have Peggy Smith, which is a human capital executive. So thank you so much for joining us today, and join us again tomorrow at 10 a.m. Central Time for more. Again, we are honored to have you, Allison. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It was great to have you. Okay, see you next time, guys. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.